Good morning, everyone. We're going to kick off this Corporate Services Committee agenda. People on this committee are myself as chair and Mr. Kevin O'Toole, Councillor Pilatus Blackmore, and Mayor Clayton. So I will call this meeting to order, and because we have some, are we doing? So we're gonna go. We're gonna switch the agenda here a little bit because some people have some time restrictions and they need to catch flights and whatnot. So we're gonna go right to 4.2, the 2022 Property Tax Bylaw. And Daniel Whiteway, please lead us in that.
Thank you, Chair Learners. So Mr. Smith and I are here to present the 2022 Property Tax Bylaw. And the recommendation is that Corporate Services Committee recommend Council give 3 readings to Property Tax Bylaw C-1450. Some previous Council direction. So to summarize, in December, Council approved the 2022 operating and capital budgets. This had a proposed increase of 1.16% for the 2022 average tax amount. In April of 2022, Council approved the transfer of sufficient funds from the Financial Stabilization Reserve to achieve a 0% change in municipal taxes for an average residential property in 2022. So the residential assessment base has stayed consistent with 2021, and the residential tax rate will have no change from last year. The commercial tax base has seen a reduction of approximately 0.85%. And the non-residential tax rate will have to increase to offset the loss in market assessment in order to generate the amount of revenue required. The 2022 education tax levy is increasing from $30.3 million to $31.2 million. This is approximately a 2% increase from last year. So the Municipal Government Act does require Council to pass a property tax bylaw annually, a property tax increase of 1.16% to non-residential properties, and a 0% change to residential properties will provide sufficient funding for the 2022 operating and capital budgets. Bylaw C-1450 sets the tax rates for each assessment class, and it is attached to your report. 3 readings are required to implement the proposed bylaw, and property tax notices will be mailed mid to late May, with payments due by June 30th, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions of the bearers of good news? Councillor Blackmore.
I don't have any questions, as I think we covered this really thoroughly at an earlier date. It is a good news story for many residences in Grande Prairie who are able to continue to fiscally manage their own households well. So if it pleases the chair, I would make the motion that committee recommend Council give 3 readings to Property Tax Bylaw C-1450.
Okay, thank you for that. I see we have at least one person on the queue, Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Leiners. Can you remind Council, please, what financial contribution would be required from Council to put the commercial tax rate at 0% as well?
If you were to reduce down the 1.16% on non-residential, it's about $780,000.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair Leiners. This isn't to the motion, but my question is just for the public. If people are paying their taxes on a monthly installment base, do they have to reapply for that every year, or is it just go through to the next year in process?
So that rolls over annually. It's they don't have to reapply. It just continues every January.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? I'll call the motion. And that is carried. So thank you very much for that. Next, we'll go to Director Trim's service area report.
Thank you, Chair Laners. So I'll try to keep it brief here this morning. As alluded to in previous updates, there are multiple departments that continue to work on our ERP implementation. We're currently undergoing the first round of testing with Deloitte on our first phase of the project. The assessment and taxation, as was just alluded to, taxation is preparing for tax time, and once we receive 3 readings on the Property Tax Bylaw, we'll proceed with producing and mailing the tax notices. As indicated, we are expecting that those will be mailed in mid-May. Our finance team is also working on finalizing the priority-based budgeting scoring, and we'll be kicking off the budget prep with departments in early May of this year. Procurement continued to facilitate competitive bids, with approximately 16 of those that are live on the market right now. And again, those can be found on our City of Grande Prairie website. IT we have our voice over IP phone migration that has begun. We're replacing the legacy system that we have been using, which is Skype for Business, with Teams. The targeted completion of that is Q4 of this year. GP 911 dispatch phone system upgrade has been completed in preparation to accommodate the future next-gen 911 requirements. This also enables full 911 call answer capacity at our backup center, which is the West Fire Hall. In GIS, we have a new open data portal feature that's been added. Users can now download the ortho photo directly instead of contacting GIS for our digital files, which had to happen historically. In Access GP, our contact center has been trending inquiries relating to our city scrub, which is taking place the first week of May. Some calls around beaver management in the Muskosipi Park area. Individuals are, bracing for summer and looking at swimming lessons and requests in relation to information on those, as well as birthday parties. Legislative Services is undergoing a review of the City Crest and Trumpeter Swan trademark bylaw and policy, scheduled to take place in May, and a report will be presented to this committee following that. Just of note that May 1st to 7th is also the 53rd Professional Municipal Clerks Week, which was established in 1969 and endorsed by members of the International Institute of Municipal Clerks throughout Canada and 16 other countries, and recognizing the essential role of municipal clerks in local government. And that concludes my report for today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Any questions of Director Trim? Wow, that was easy. Thank you very much. Obviously, it was a good report. Next, we will go to what do we got here? Yeah, I just gotta pop it up here 1 second here. So next, we'll have the committee report on the living wage, Grande Prairie's living wage. I think that's Manager of Human Resources, Mr. Sheldon D'Souza.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak to you about the City of Grande Prairie's living wage report. On March 15th, 2022, Tammy Wenzel, Community Development Supervisor for the City of Grande Prairie, presented to committee information regarding the 2021 living wage for Grande Prairie, Alberta. The living wage is defined as the hourly wage that a worker needs to earn to cover the basic living expenses within the community. In 2021, the living wage in the City of Grande Prairie was $19.45 per hour. We currently have 70 of approximately 960 employees below the 2021 average living wage. These employees make up 7.3% of the organization and consists of 67 casuals employees and 3 temporary employees. No established part-time or full-time employees make less than the living wage for Grande Prairie. Many casuals and temporary employees have other jobs or other obligations that take time away from working established full-time positions. All city employees that work 35 or more hours per week are compensated at or above Grande Prairie's average living wage. Thank you for your time today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Any questions for that? I think I see Councillor Bressie beside me here.
Great, thank you. No questions, but just as kind of the instigator of this, I just did want to say thank you for the information you brought back. I think it's useful for me for two reasons. One is there's often a concern in the community about, are we paying staff too much? And I think that that is a conversation that's worth council learning more about in the future. But often with that, I hear people just completely wrongly say, hey, well, you can't work for the city without making at least $30 an hour or some ridiculous wage. And that's simply not true. So it's great to know that that's some of the myths that are out there aren't true. But also for me, it is, if somebody's working for the city, I don't want them to be serving our residents while living in poverty themselves. And for me, I don't. It's great to know that we don't have any full-time workers in that position. That if you're working full-time with the city, you can at least comfortably raise your kids and support yourself. When it comes to casual and temporary, I don't really care if the person making extra pocket money is making a living wage, but I do know that we do have some casual and temporary employees who are kids that are working an extra job because their family genuinely needs an extra little bit of income, or people that aren't getting by with their full-time jobs or around their other obligations or making a little bit of extra money. And so it bothers me a little bit that I don't know how I honestly don't know how I feel about casual and temporary workers making below living wage, but for me it's really good, really comforting to know that our full-time positions at least aren't living in poverty. And so it's great to have this information. So thank you for the work.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Laners. Thanks for the report, Mr. D'Souza. Just a question. I already had it written down, but Councillor Bressie a bit alluded to it. One thing I didn't see in the report was information about youth workers. I know that typically, at least with the new minimum wage standards that the province dropped, what a youth worker could be paid by an employer. Was youth workers included in this, and are they also in that rate above? Like, I'm thinking lifeguards, like lawnmowers, like weed pluckers, stuff like that. Do we pay them above the minimum wage as well? Because I didn't quite see that in the ones that are in the table presented.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, they were considered within the wages that we had. We have seasonal employees that would consist of that, lifeguards, everything that you had talked about, we did consider within those parameters.
Okay, cool. And they're all paid the standard wage that we would pay anybody that was coming in to do those same jobs?
Yeah, based on the position that they're coming into, yes, absolutely.
Beautiful, thank you.
I would be curious to see if the QP agreement has weed pluckers in it, but having said that, Councillor Blackmore.
Moving right along. Mr. D'Souza, just a follow-up question to Councillor Bressie's comments. Can you remind all of us what the minimum wage in Alberta is currently and the differential between that wage and the wages that we're paying those people who are below the living wage?
Absolutely. So the minimum wage for Alberta is $15, and the average wage for living for Grande Prairie is $19.45.
So the employees who are listed on your report are all earning at least $1 and some more than the minimum wage?
Yes, that is correct. Through the chair.
Thank you for that. Any further questions or comments? Okay, so I think we take that for information and appreciate your. We definitely need a motion. So I guess we need a motion, Mr. O'Toole.
I would like to make a motion that council receive this committee receive this report for information. Thank you. I've got tears in my eyes from laughing. A little bit there.
Okay, I'll call the vote. And that is, that's carried. Next, we have on our agenda bylaw C-1451. It is the special recreation services tax levy in Pinnacle Ridge. And I'll ask Mr. Wade Nellis to come up and chat with us and tell us all the good reasons why we want to support this or not.
Good morning, everyone. Through the chair, this is a report to recommend that council give 3 readings to the Special Recreational Services Tax Bylaw C-1451. So a small amount of background on this item. A decorative water fountain was installed in the Pinnacle Ridge neighborhood. The city covered the costs of operating that until 2010, at which point it was thought that the ongoing operation was unsustainable and made plans to remove it, at which point the Pinnacle Ridge Neighborhood Association was formed and submitted a petition in order to enact an annual tax that would help support the cost of this water feature and allow it to remain. That tax has been passed every successive year. It started at $20 per household and climbed to $25 per household in 2016. And this year we are proposing a reduction in that tax to $12.50 per household. The reason being is that the pump was replaced in 2017 due to ongoing damage from vandalism and wildlife. The new pump has a lower operating cost, so therefore the amount required to support this feature year after year has dropped. So administration feels that it can be adequately supported with this reduced tax rate. It'll result in the collection of $8,350. The actual average cost for maintaining this pump has been $8,140.38 over the past 4 years. So we would be recommending the adoption of bylaw C-1451, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Lerners. Mr. Nellis, can you just tell me, is there any money that's allocated for the next time a new pump is required, or is it just we just add it on the year that we buy it?
There has a healthy reserve has been built up over the past several years due to the size of the budget. So right now that reserve has $42,912 in it. We anticipate the replacement cost of the current pump to be in the $8,500 range. So should that come up, we're confident that the current reserve can absorb that cost.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much. This is absolutely a good news story, and I'm sure that the city has did a lot of research to make sure that we got the proper pump at a reasonable price. And thank you to whoever's in charge of that. If there's no other questions, I'd be willing to make a motion.
I got one.
And with that, I move that committee recommend council give 3 readings to the special recreational services tax, which is bylaw C-1451. And yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll accept that motion, but I got a bunch of people in the queue, so I'll start with Dylan, Mr. Bressy, our Councillor Bressy.
Great, thank you. I'm just curious if any analysis has been done on, are we actually making money to fund the pump by passing this bylaw? I mean, it costs money to write and pass a bylaw. I assume it costs money to collect a special tax. By the time has there been much analysis done by, are we spending $8,000 just to collect $8,000? Has there been any of that kind of analysis done with us dropping this bylaw amount?
Thank you. Through the chair, I may have to refer that question to Director Trim. My apologies. I don't really have the information around the amount that it takes for us to collect and distribute that money at this point. Yeah,
and if I may, Chair Lenders, maybe it's not relevant this year, and I'm fine I'd be fine if this went to council pass into this year, but since this is something we do year after year after year, maybe we want to have administration do that analysis instead of just automatically bring this back to us next year. So yeah, I guess I'm fine with it going forward this year, but I think we should think about that.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We have a collection fee in our regular municipal, it's inherent to operation, so I'm not sure why this would be any different, but and I'm sure we'll leave that up to Director Trim to maybe bring that forward next year. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair Laners. This is just mainly a comment. As council, we are really advocating for pride of place and quality of life within our community and area. So I'd like to commend the Pinnacle community for, standing up for both of those aspects, and they're willing to pay for it. Pride of place is exactly what we need to do more of in our community. So this is great news. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thiessen, did you say? Okay, so I do have one question. So I'm not really familiar with the process. So they petitioned, say 10 years ago to have this continue. If they wanted to discontinue it, how do we know when they've had enough? Like, would they have to re-petition us to stop it, I'm not sure on the process.
Through the chair, I'll take a stab at that. We do notify the community that this discussion is ongoing and give them the opportunity to either attend this meeting or the council meeting that rejuvenates this annually. However, I think since the reserve has grown to a larger level, during this upcoming season, we'll probably reach out to the Pinnacle Neighborhood Association to see, gather some feedback on what they see the future of this water feature being, and if they may want to potentially look at utilizing part of that reserve to upgrade or enhance this water feature.
Okay, and that reserve, is it specifically limited to that water feature, or could they use it for a playground on the banks of that water feature or something in their neighborhood?
Through the chair, I'm not sure on the restrictions on that reserve, but I could definitely find out and get back to you.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good. Okay, so we do have a motion on the table, so I'll call the vote. That's carried. Next, we have discussion on the Children's Memorial Garden, some clarity and some questions, and so Daniel Whiteway, I think, or I don't see her anywhere. Oh, there she is. Yes, take my glass. There we go.
Need a motion to go in camera, I think.
No, not yet. We will later.
And Chair Laners.
Right away, right now? Okay.
Chair Laners, I'm going to excuse myself for a potential conflict on this one.
Sure. Okay. That sounds good. I guess I need a motion then to go in camera.
Quick.
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole.
Okay.
All those in favor? And we made it. We're in camera. Cone of silence. Oh, go ahead, Daniel, please.
Thank you, Chair Leiners. So administration's prepared a report with regards to a previous direction. So we do recommend that committee receive this report for information. So it was on April 4th that Council directed administration to report back to the appropriate standing committee regarding the Children's Memorial Garden and identify any potential funding options for $54,768 as requested by Tiny Hands of Hope. So a little background, Tiny Hands of Hope was provided land from the city in 2017 to support the creation of a Children's Memorial Garden. This organization is actively fundraising to cover costs and has requested an additional $54,768 from Council to complete the pathways and trash bins and allowing them to fully complete the earthworks, landscaping, and some sculptures. So administration's identified 2 potential funding sources if Council wished to fund the request from the organization. So either the Council Strategic Initiatives Fund or the unrestricted portion of the city's future expenditures reserve could be used. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure, are you just here today for questions and answers, or did you have something that you particularly wanted to say? Okay, perfect. Is there any questions of Ms. Whiteway or, okay, Councillor Blackburn?
My question for administration is just a point of clarification. I see in our agenda package that the motion for this is to receive this report for information. So you're not asking us today to identify a source or an amount or anything locked in dollar signs?
Through the chair, that's correct. So the request from Council have been to identify potential funding sources. So that's all that's being provided for information today.
So just to get this on the table for discussion, if it please the chair, I would make the motion that committee receive this report for information.
Okay, Mayor Clayton.
Question's not on the motion, but for administration. Ms. Whiteway, can you tell me when Council decides to take cash in lieu of MR, remind me where that money goes? Does it go to general revenue? Does it go, what reserve does it go to?
Sorry, receive which, sorry?
So if we were to take cash in lieu of a municipal reserve, where would that cash go to?
It would go into the reserve, into the transportation levy reserve.
So therefore, could this be funded from the transportation levy?
That isn't something I've looked into. I'd have to double check to make sure that that's a funding source. It wasn't one that would be typically used, so I'd have to double check on it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I find that weird that there wouldn't be a separate parks cash in lieu fund as opposed to just the general tax. If that's a very good source for that that fund. Mr. O'Connor, Michael O'Connor.
Yes, through the chair, thank you. You've identified putting trash bins there, and I'd like to ask administration if we could supply the trash bins and reduce your budget down, because we have a certain specification on the type of bins because of bears. So I'm just wondering if that would be acceptable, and so I'm asking if that's available.
Through the chair, that's something we hadn't investigated. I don't know if we'd have those currently in inventory, but it would be an additional cost that would be borne by the city in that case in order to place those garbage cans. That would be, we'd take that direction from council if they so chose.
Okay, did you have a comment?
They were City of Parks approved. We do have the same supplier that the city, so they are bear proof and such. We are meeting that requirement.
Great, thank you. Is there any further questions? Comments? Okay, so we have a motion on this to simply receive this report for, oh, you say yes? Oh, sorry, Councillor Thiessen.
And I think we asked administration a lot of questions when we were in camera here. This is just for Ms. Gilkinson. As far as you said you applied the last time you were here for other grants and you're waiting to hear back on those. Could you tell us what grants you applied for to help support this project, like provincially, federally, or otherwise?
So since I was last here, I did apply to the Canada Post Foundation grant. That one is $5,000. So not a huge grant. There was a lot of requirements that they needed that we didn't quite fit the criteria. So we had to go with the lowest denominator for that one.
Okay, and you mentioned last time that was it the provincial grant funding that you were looking into as well? Or?
Yeah, yes. So that one was due. I did provide the follow-up to that grant. The CFEP, I believe, is the acronym for that one. So that one is a $125,000 grant. We won't know if we get that grant until July.
Okay, and as far as like cutting ground on the garden, the memorial garden, with this $54,000, does that impede your progress or your ability to cut open the ground and start developing the garden this year?
Nope. It just we will move forward. It just means that it will have to just do more fundraising to obtain that goal. So we will proceed with the groundbreaking. The surveying and the landscaping company were on site today. I will be working with Brian, Mr. Glavin, and we will work on the agreement and work with the city of Grande Prairie as well as our primary contractor to make sure that everything's laid out prior to breaking ground. So we are still aiming to do that this month, or sorry, May.
May. Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Gilkinson, when is this? What's the total cost of this project again? Sorry.
It currently sits at $402,000. However, I believe we did mention a possible reserve should the city want that added. So if the city of Grande Prairie does want a reserve, then we'll add that to our budget.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Clayton, do you have a question? No? Anybody else for of the CLT or Ms. Gilkinson? Oh, Daniel. Wait.
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to follow up on Mayor Clayton's comment for the reserve. So the public reserve would be the one that could be an alternative to fund this. So the funds within that reserve may be used for the creation or expansion of parks or the acquisition of land for the creation or expansion of parks in the city as approved by council. So if that could be a third funding source for the $54,000.
Great. So I don't know if we need to do anything else. We already passed the motion, so we didn't. It looks like she just got her name on the side. Okay, I thought it said carried. Got to get used to this e-scribe here, and my memory is losing advantages being old. Okay, so I'll call the motion. And that is carried. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. Our next item is correspondence. I see none. Any other business? Seeing none. Bylaw and policy review. Seeing none. Outstanding items list. Director Trim.
Thank you, Chair Laners. We had 2 items on the outstanding items list, both of which were brought forward at the meeting today, so can subsequently be removed.
Ooh, those are fun. Get a motion from Councillor O'Toole.
I'll make a motion to update the outstanding items list as presented, which means we have no items. Thank you.
That sounds a lot like committee received the April 26th outstanding item list as amended for information, so thank you. I'll take that motion.
You can digest it that way, sure.
All those in favor? And that is carried, so I will call this meeting adjourned.